Our banking system is sound.
In the past 2 weeks, serious difficulties at a small number of banks have emerged.
These banks are safe.
All depositors' savings in the banking system are safe.
The banking system in the United States is sound and resilient.
Banking system is sound. Banking system is sound. Banking system is sound. Banking system is sound and resilient.
A rough week for the banking industry.
The collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, the second biggest bank collapse in U.S. history.
The Silicon Valley Bank collapse is the worst since 2008.
Social Security is structurally sound.
As president, I will not cut one penny from Social Security or Medicare.
There's an imminent disaster waiting. I mean, that's where we're headed.
2 balls, 2 strikes to Bryce Harper. Suarez delivers. Swing and a drive. Left field. It's deep. It's going. Yes! And it is gone. Yes! It is bedlam at the bank as Bryce Harper has put the Phillies on top.
Thank you for tuning in to Bogus Banks, Behemoth Bubbles, and Baseball Betting. I'm your host, Chase Goldman, and today is Sunday, December the 28th. I want to start the podcast with going over a little bit of baseball. I'm really looking forward to the start of a new season. We are less than 90 days away from opening day, which is going to be this year on March, or I guess that would be next year on March 29th. Or I'm sorry, March 25th. So I'm looking forward to that. But I wanted to go over a little bit of the what I was just looking at on my spreadsheet. Now, our posted record last year, I think it won, like, I want to say, I'm going from memory, like 31.44 units. And then our spreadsheet record was better than that. But I'm still in the process of reconciling all this. What made it a little bit confusing was during the 2024 baseball season, I actually added two. So I started this season with 9 filters that I liked, and I wound up adding 2 more as the season progressed. I added one, I believe I added one in, it was either May or June, and then I added yet another one in, I believe it was probably August. And anyway, looking at what, I don't have this finalized yet because I've still got to go through and manually adjust some things, but it looks like to me that during the 2024 baseball season, that would be me and anyone else who follows me on Bogus Banks on Twitter, at Twitter. It would be at Bogus Banks on Twitter. We would have bet on somewhere in the ballpark of 800 baseball games. Now, you'll notice that when I post my plays on Twitter, there's sometimes a 2x or a 3x. And that is where I've got 2 of these formulas telling me to bet on the same baseball game. So when that happens, I bet twice as much. And then, so during the season, we had 91 2x bets. We had 4 3x bets and 1 4x bets. So the 4x bet went 1-0. The 3x bets were 3-1. The 2x bets were 54 and 37. Our total record was 448. Winning baseball games, 387 losing baseball games. Now that's based on the units. So, you know, if you back out the double, triple, and quadruple bets that we were triggered on during the season, the record would be a little bit lower than that in terms of the overall win percentage. But we had a good season, and I'm really looking forward to the start of a brand new baseball season. So, you know, I was asking one of the chat bots today, it was Gemini. That's become my personal favorite. I feel like it's the fastest, and I also feel like it gives you, I think consistently it's giving me more intelligent answers than the other 2 that I always do. I was dealing with Grok a lot. That one's so slow. I don't like it anymore. And then chat, I feel like that one is just so, I don't know. I just feel like it just will not go against officialdom in the slightest sense of the word at all. So that one bothers me a little bit. But regardless, we had a good baseball season. And if you had played each one of those, let's say that you have a $3,000 a month mortgage payment to make on your home. If you played each one of those bets for a $1,000 unit, well, on my posted record, you probably recovered enough to if you made enough to cover your mortgage payments for the year. So I asked the chatbot, Gemini, I said, what is the difference between betting and investing? You know what it told me the answer was? The answer, when it defined investing, it used the word betting to define investing. I don't care if you're a long-term buy and hold investor in stocks, if you've got something in bonds, it doesn't matter what you do if you're all in on gold, physical gold in your possession. It's all a bet. It's no matter what you do, it's a bet. You know, if you would have bought into the Japanese stock market at its all-time high in 1990, you were betting it would continue to go higher, and it didn't. And for that reason, you never got back to parity on that in nominal terms on that investment in the Nikkei until I think it was late 2024. So for 34 years, you were underwater. The same thing happened when the NASDAQ bubble burst. From 2000, I think it took all the way till 2016. It was 16 years. If you bought at the top of that dot-com bubble, you were underwater. So let's go back to the conspiracy trade. I'm not going to go over all of the reasons that I think that conspiracy trade made sense. We did breach the all-time intraday high set on the S&P 500 on October 29th. It was breached on Christmas Eve. So I closed out a third of my short position. I'm still keeping 2/3 of my short position in play. And I'm refocusing on the NASDAQ, but I also feel like there's about 1,000,001 reasons for this bubble to pop. And when it does, I think it's going to be bad. But I did find something this week that, in researching for this podcast today, that really made me, scratch my chin on this one. It raises an eyebrow with me. So if there's if this bubble winds up popping here in the next, I don't know, let's say month or quarter. Okay, if this bubble winds up popping, and if we look back with 2020 hindsight and we say, when did it pop? What was the moment that it popped? What was the cause? When did it pop? Me personally, I would point to Brad Gerstner's interview on October 31st with Sam Altman, where he says, with $13 billion of annual revenue, how are you going to be able to spend $1.4 trillion on infrastructure? And Sam Altman says, now, first of all, our revenue run rate is much higher than that. And second of all, I can find somebody to buy your shares. It's just enough. That's exactly what Altman said. He should have had a prepared statement for that question. He should have had a plan. It sounded like he has no plan whatsoever. He's just flying by the seat of his pants is what I got out of that, and I think a lot of other investors did too. So if I look back, if this bubble pops in January or even in the first quarter, and we look back at what was the cause of this popping of the bubble, I would point to that interview. Now, also you had Alex Karn going on. Was he on CNBC when he was he was being interviewed by Andrew Ross Sorkin when he was squirming around in his chair and he couldn't sit still, and he's literally standing halfway up out of the chair repeatedly. I mean, bouncing around like he's, I don't know if people that are high on cocaine act that way, but that's certainly, he was acting weird. So you had that, and then shortly after that, you had, Michael Burry, the short seller, is publicly saying he's short NVIDIA and Palantir. He's also putting out, hey, anybody got any pictures of these, GPUs sitting around in warehouses not being used? Because I think they figured out that there's not enough data centers that went in this year to make up for the 6 million Blackwell GPUs that Jensen Huang says they shipped. So, I mean, there's so many different issues, but, right after this news came out that he was shorting NVIDIA came out with basically a press release that said, we're not Enron and we're not Lucent. And, it just sounds like everybody's acting so defensive. Like they are, I think this bubble's going to pop. I really do. I mean, I don't see how this thing's going to keep going. But one thing that's going on right now is SoftBank. Now, first of all, I'll say this. If OpenAI implodes, I'm going to say NVIDIA is going to implode. And if NVIDIA implodes, the whole entire AI bubble pops. I'm sorry, it's all going down, in my opinion. SoftBank has until December 31st, which gives it 3 full business days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, New Year's Eve, to produce $22.5 billion. So what they did was they went into OpenAI and they got in back in March, and they committed to spend $30 billion to invest that much with OpenAI at a $300 billion valuation. And they gave them $7.5 billion, I guess, at that time with this. And the story I got from Gemini was that they have to come up with another $22.5 billion only if OpenAI would transform itself from a nonprofit to a for-profit corporation, which I think they've done. I think they did that in October, November. And so now, they're waiting on the $22.5 billion so they can continue funding of this Stargate thing they've got going on in Texas. So I've been doing some research and looking into this whole story on SoftBank. So what SoftBank has done is they've sold $5.8 billion worth of NVIDIA stock, and they've also sold $7.8 billion worth of their T-Mobile US stock. So they've got a little over half of it there, but they need about another 11.5 billion, I believe, is the math. And they're planning to pledge their ARM Holdings stock as collateral for a loan. So they've already drawn down $13.5 billion on that loan facility. It was a loan facility that was originally $20 billion. They've extended that to $25. Looks like they're going to draw most of that down and pretty much have, debt of $25 billion against their $101 billion of ARM holdings. Now, before I go any further, I want to give you guys the Scott McNealy speech. April 1st, 2002, Sun Microsystems. Scott McNealy is the CEO of Sun Microsystems right after the dot-com bubble popped. And on April 1st, April Fool's Day, his famous speech was published in Business Week. And I think if there was a title for this speech, it was "What Were You Thinking?" So basically, Sun Microsystems had gone from a share price of $64 all the way down to $5. And when this thing was published in Business Week on April 1st, I think it was back up to $9. But it went from 64 to 5. And the title of this speech was "What Were You Thinking?" So at its top, I guess at $64 a share, Sun Microsystems was worth $200 billion. Okay? And in this speech, Scott McNealy says, you bid this company up to 10 times sales. I want to be clear. That's not 10 times earnings. That's 10 times sales. He went on to say, look, if I could cut all my R&D, I cut my investor relations to zero. I cut all these costs. All 39,000 employees that work for me, they start getting paid zero tomorrow. If I could cut all of my costs to zero, and if I could get my board to agree to pay out all my profits as dividends to the shareholders, it would take you a decade to recover your investment. What were you thinking? And, when you look at ARM Holdings, this company it's just part of this bubble. So SoftBank has this amazing investment that they've made with ARM Holdings. It's one of their only winners. Remember, by the way, SoftBank is the same exact company that lost a record-setting $14 billion on WeWork about 5 years ago, maybe 6. And if you couldn't see that WeWork was a disaster just waiting for a place to happen, I don't know what to tell you. And I got a feeling OpenAI is going to be the exact same way. But these geniuses at SoftBank are the same ones that did WeWork, and now they're going to go do OpenAI. They've already put $7.5 billion in. They need to come up with another $22.5 billion by New Year's Eve. I got a feeling they're probably going to be able to come up with that money. Because if they don't, I feel like the bubble pops right then and there. But let's go back to ARM Holdings. This stock is trading at, are you ready for this? 46.6 times, not earnings, sales. I'm going to repeat that. ARM Holdings, which is the collateral for this loan that SoftBank wants to take out so that they can keep this AI bubble going with OpenAI is trading at 46.6 times sales. Their earnings over the last 12 months, trailing 12 months earnings are 78 cents a share under GAAP accounting. 78 cents. Adjusted for the last 2 years, they've pretty much been able to double their GAAP earnings on adjusted earnings over the last 8 quarters. So anytime you see that much of a mismatch between adjusted and GAAP, you probably need to look into that because you're probably being lied to about something. In other words, those adjusted earnings, they shouldn't be that much better than your GAAP earnings, in my opinion. So ARM Holdings is trading at 46.6 times sales. In other words, if ARM Holdings could cut all their costs to zero, and if they paid out all of their earnings, which would be their sales, if they just took their sales from their customers and handed it directly to the shareholders, it would take you nearly 50 years to break even buying ARM Holdings today. Their earnings are 78 cents a share. The share price closed on Friday the 26th at $101 a share. So that's like 140 times earnings. Where are they going to get all this magnificent growth? Where's it coming from? I bet you the reason that stock's bid up so high is because AI is just going to the moon, baby. This bubble's just going to keep going, and we can all party like rock stars. We're going to have robots washing our dishes and mowing our lawns and building our houses, driving our cars. It's going to be absolute paradise. That's the sales pitch coming from San Francisco and the tech heads. I'm really not buying that. Maybe that'll happen, but I'm not buying it, and I'm certainly betting against it. So I have reswitched my focus from the S&P 500 for the all-time intraday high of October 29th. The NASDAQ 100 is where I'm focusing now. Now, I know I originally started out focused on the Dow, and then I realized, well, wait a minute. It really does depend on where the focus of humanity is, and I thought it was the S&P 500. But now that I think about, and I've been thinking this, for the last, this high is held for 2 months in the NASDAQ. You see these Invesco QQQ advertisements all over the place. They put them in baseball stadiums. They advertise on the NFL. I mean, they are advertising everywhere, and maybe that's really where the focus of humanity is. I don't know. There's more assets under management in the ETFs that mimic the S&P 500 than there are the NASDAQ 100. But where's the focus of the people? I don't know. So I'm going to stick with NASDAQ until we breach that all-time high set on October 29th. I'm going to stay short the NASDAQ. But I did take a third of my bet off the table. If we get back to within 1% of a new all-time intraday high, then I'm going to put that third back on there, knowing that I can handle another 1% to go up, and then I'm closing out the trade. But there was something else that I discovered this morning about the conspiracy trade, and I thought this one was really interesting. Remember, I said, if we look back on this, if this bubble pops in the first quarter of 2026, if it pops, we're going to look back on this, and if I'm looking back on it, I find that one defining moment that popped the bubble, I would say it was that interview with Brad Gerstner, where he is interviewing Sam Altman. How the hell are you going to spend 1.4 trillion when you've only got 13 billion in revenues? And Sam says enough. That, in my opinion, is what would ultimately be the defining moment of the popping of this bubble. I was watching that interview. I was watching another podcast, and they put a clip of on their YouTube video of that exact interview this morning. I was watching it, and I looked, and I was like, holy shit. There's that book again. Right behind Brad Gerstner, sitting right behind him, right over his left shoulder. If you watch that interview, there's a copy of Andrew Ross Sorkin's 1929 Stock Market Crash book. I researched it today. That book was released on October 14th. He rang the bell on October 28th. This interview between Gerstner and Altman, where he says, how are you going to do 1.4 trillion in spending with 13 billion in revenue? Guess what the date of that interview was? It was Halloween, October 31st. So, of course, I go to my chatbot, Gemini. Hey, Gemini, is October 31st significant in witchcraft? Oh, it's the most revered day in all of witchcraft. October 31st. So I'm staying in the trade. I don't know if I'm going to be right or wrong. So far, all I've seen for the last 5 years, there is nothing this market will not buy. No matter how ridiculous the lies are coming out of Carvana, it doesn't matter. There is nothing this market will not buy. So we're going to see what happens. I'm staying short the trade. Even if we do breach that all-time high in the NASDAQ, in the next few trading days or later in January, I think I'm still going to stay somewhat short this market. I'm not going to be, betting pedal to the metal like I am right now. I'm going to take a lot of that off, but I'm still going to stay short this market. I think it's a bubble. Just wait, looking for a pin. That's the way I feel about this thing right now. There are so many similarities between what I'm seeing today and I think what I remember of the dot-com bubble 25 years ago. But when we look at the Buffett indicator, I believe that during the dot-com Buffett indicator, by the way, just so people out there know, is Warren Buffett takes the GDP of the United States and the market cap of, I think it's the entire stock market. It might be the S&P 500, maybe it's the Wilshire 5000, maybe it's just the whole damn thing. I don't know. But at any rate, the Buffett indicator got to 150% of GDP at the top of .com. Today, that percentage is 240%. Would you believe that? 240%. The market cap versus GDP of the United States. So the argument is, hey, we're exporters now. We export all these services to other countries. Whether it's Microsoft or Apple or, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, these are all exported overseas. So that's why we're so much bigger. And plus, all these corporations are international now. They've got McDonald's, all over Mexico and all over Europe. So that's the argument. But I'm still saying I think the Buffett indicator is going to be right in the end. I know the old man sitting in T-bills right now waiting on this market to crash. He should have gotten into gold. All those people that went into T-bill and chill, all they've seen is their tickets on the life raft get higher and higher. We closed at $4,533 an ounce on the 26th of December. And silver, as you know, is up around $78 or $9 an ounce. I didn't buy enough silver. I bought too much gold. But that's me. I'm going to stay short these markets. I feel like this thing is just a bubble looking for a pin. And the other part of that is if this cascade does come down, let's say I did the math today, a margin call for SoftBank would start around $66 a share on ARM Holdings. It's 101 now. If it comes down to 66, SoftBank gets that margin call, and then that bank, they don't want the stock. They're going to sell that stock. And that's going to drive everybody else to get margin calls, and the whole thing just turns into a shit show bloodbath real quick overnight. And by the way, you've got over $20 trillion of foreign investment in the U.S. stock market right now, and those people are not going to stomach very much in terms of a drop. I don't think. I think they'll become sellers too, and this thing just spirals out of control real quick. So that's what I'm betting on. I think when this thing does start with $1 trillion in margin debt out there, which is also a record, oh boy, yeah, there's not enough gold in the world for what's coming. If you don't own gold, I sure do think maybe you should consider it. Now, everything that I'm saying on this podcast is not investment advice. This is what I'm doing. I'm betting on baseball, which is something that's real and I can see, and I don't have to guess. Was the trading volume real? I can see that the pitch was thrown through the strike zone and it was called a strike. I can see that the ball was hit and it was a home run that went over the wall, and there's no official that can drop a flag and negate that. And I like betting on baseball. And I think you can make it a source of income if you were to. Now, I could lose. I mean, 2026 could be a horrible year, and I could lose 50 units. Who knows? But based on, I'm still betting on what was in the past, and what's worked for 18 years, I expect it to work again in the 19th year. We will see. We will see. But this is not investment advice to anyone listening. It's just what I'm doing. So that's it for this podcast. I appreciate you guys listening, and we will be back with podcast number 13 in the not too distant future. Thanks for listening.